are you joking right now? Or like, am I getting punked? And I was like, let me just go see from my own eyes. So I was just like, walked back there. I needed to take something in my car anyway, so I would pass through there. And I saw her and I was just like, hey, what you doing? And she was like, reading. And I was like, that's such an interesting thing to be doing right.
We have this saying in our office, like to be the thermostat versus be the thermometer. So you're the one setting the tone, especially when it comes to people who like our office manager, our back office manager, people who are in more like areas of authority, I would say. How you respond to a situation is going to be how the rest of the team responds.
We get frustrated because we feel like we're about to hold them accountable to something that they should just know not to do. But at the end of the day, if you haven't set the standard and the foundation of what's expected in those moments, then they just thought differently and chose differently being in that moment. And you just have to redirect, not discipline or hold accountable.
All right, welcome everybody. Today is a very special episode because we have Miss Bailey Sloan here on the Path to Victory podcast. Welcome, Bailey.
So excited to be here.
So excited to have you. Bailey, contrary to popular belief, is not a chiropractor. So this is going to kind of shy away from the normal clinical stuff. And we're going to get into more leadership, more team stuff, because that's kind of her jam.
Yeah.
And so Bailey is a business partner, 50-50 split with Dr. Logan. And I definitely want you to share about that. They have a clinic called Cadence Chiropractic in Birmingham, Alabama, which people actually do live there. For those of you listening,
Believe it or not, they choose
people live in Birmingham. No, just kidding. In all seriousness, super happy to have Bailey here. We're under the same coaching business coach, I would say, and just learned so much. Got to know her personally. She's not only a really funny and good person, but honestly,
good
just
looking.
Yeah, beautiful, good looking, all the things. She's single also. Just throwing that out there. But she's just a mastermind and a genius when it comes to team and leadership. So super, super happy and grateful to have you on here.
Yeah, I'm super pumped. Thanks.
Of course. All right, Bailey. So I know I gave you a pretty good intro, but I definitely want to hear more about y'all's origin story, about how Cadence was birthed, and kind of, if you will, explain your dynamic with Dr. Logan.
Yeah, absolutely. So I never heard of chiropractic. I actually started working for a chiropractor in Auburn. So I had gone to college for psychology. So just had a psychology degree, but was doing full-time ministry. But as I've said before, doing the good Lord's work does not pay the bills all the time. So you need some supplemental cash. So I was working, my friend worked at a chiropractic office and they needed someone to do their social media and marketing, which just means you're a chiropractic assistant that takes pictures. So I learned all about chiropractic, had never heard of it before. Obviously I had seen stuff on like YouTube, or back in my day, we watched YouTube, not TikTok.
Right.
And then that's actually where me and Logan met. So she was doing her peak internship there and had just become an associate. But we were in like similar age. She's pretty ancient. She's 5 years older than me in her 30s. Can't relate. But we bonded really well with her and our mutual friend. And so we started hanging out. And she did had the opportunity to launch their first satellite location. So kind of take the keys and drive, but financially backed from the owner. She kind of didn't have any financial risk at all, but really got to lead it. It was really all on her, building team, marketing, all that. So she really got experience leading an office. And then part of my story was I was married at the time and wanted to have kids and intentionally wanted to choose to move back to Birmingham when that happened. And so I knew that when I had kids, I wanted them to have chiropractic care. But before I worked on my limiting mindset beliefs, I thought I wouldn't be able to afford it. And so I actually approached our owner, and he had always said, because I had started working my way up in the company a little bit more of just a CA, like learning more back end stuff, marketing, business development, training, stuff like that. And so I just approached him, and he had always said the hardest part about launching new locations is finding good doctors. And so I approached him and said, hey, like, this is where my heart's at. I eventually do want to move to Birmingham. I don't know if you've ever thought about opening a Birmingham location, but I know doctors are hardest to find. So if you're willing to partner and maybe put something in writing, that I would be willing to go to chiropractic school. And because our timeline at the time for kids was 3 to 5 years. And so I was like, that's about how long it takes to get through school. So I would love, like, obviously I love the profession. And he looked at my strengths. They were really big into Gallup Strengths Finders, and just saw that my strengths were more of like the execution operations role, and said, of course, like, you can go to chiropractic school, but I feel like you'd be better in business side of things. So time went on, and then basically we both just decided, my brother actually started having kids, and it's my calling in life to be the fun aunt. So I knew I wanted to be in their life when they started having kids. And so I wanted to be back to Birmingham. I was going through a divorce. And then also Logan and I just both weren't being treated to our fullest potential, I will say,
Mm,
at her associateship and at that position. So we decided,
yeah.
hey, we're gonna make some mistakes of our own, but let's go try to launch this thing. And she really took a big risk on me, and I really took a big risk on her of just honoring each other's zone of genius and saying, hey, I think you're gonna kill it at this. I think you kill it at this. Let's partner together and see if we can make a beautiful business out of it. And that's exactly what's happened. So that's kind of our
Amazing.
dynamic.
Amazing. And you guys are primarily pediatric focused, right?
Yeah, we do peds, prenatals, and really venturing more into like the neurodivergent PX model cases as well.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so a couple follow-up questions from what you mentioned, because you mentioned your previous boss was really into the Gallup
Yeah.
test, and I know you recommend doing testing for teams specifically. What are some practical tips that you could give for maybe some leaders or doctors who maybe own a clinic or are looking to? What kind of tests would you recommend that they run to find staff or to test their current staff?
Yeah, there's so many out there, and honestly, I feel like they kind of go in trends and waves. I think strengths is a great one, especially if you can really splurge and get unlock all 34 of them or however many it is, just
Yeah.
because you have the option to do the top five, which shows you what they're really good at. But if you do the
Mm-hmm.
top 34, you can see what their lowest weaknesses are. And so you can kind of see, okay, we're not only maximizing on their strengths, but we're also hiring to support their weaknesses, especially as leaders and owners. So I think that one's really, really good. I think the Enneagram is helpful. I think, especially, I think some people say you're the same Enneagram all the time, but I kind of believe you kind of mold and shift with
Yeah.
identity unlocks. And that's kind of what happened with
Yeah.
me. But I think all personality tests are tools, and they help you understand yourself. I think it gets into a little bit gray area of like boxing people in, but it's a tool
Totally.
to understand motivations behind people and natural defaults for people that help
Yeah.
you give grace and lead them better, not just like put tasks on their plate because they're a three or because they have an activator strength.
Sure. So it's going to help you communicate better with them, understanding how they receive criticism and praise and all that good stuff. And then
Yes.
are you also going to reward based on like that particular test?
What do you mean by that?
So let's say I think everybody thinks that all employees or staff or team, whatever you call them,
Mm.
respond really well to like money. Like,
Oh,
let's just
yeah.
give them a bonus. Let's just throw them a $100 bill here. Not everybody actually responds really well to that. Some people love to be like praised in public.
Yes.
Some people hate that. Some people are
Yeah.
like, hey, I just want a day off to like go hang out with my kids. So
100%. Yeah.
how do you distinguish that? How do you discern that?
Yeah, I think part of it is discernment, and then part of it is just asking. I am big on surveys, and I think it's just really important to subjectively express your desires, but also objectively measure it, because also what's
Mm,
true for you in one season isn't true in the next. And so in one season, like when you're onboarded, you may say that approaching your next job and your next workplace, you really want to value time off. But once you get 3 months in, you might be in a scenario where your desires for life change and you actually would more so appreciate money. And
yeah,
then sometimes
absolutely.
too, just like having conversations with your team of like doing those love language tests, and figuring out what means the most versus what they need the most.
Mm,
So it would show appreciation by writing them a handwritten card. But what would actually make the biggest impact if you really want to serve them is maybe pairing that with paying for their oil change or giving them a
yeah.
bonus because their kids are going back to school. And so just like matching need with want at the same time.
Yeah, that's really good. I love that. The subjective and objective thing. I never thought about that. How many are on y'all's team as of now, as of today?
We have six total, including Logan and I. So four team members and then two owners.
Amazing. So this next question is kind of about your journey into leadership, stepping into that. What was, would you say, the biggest adjustment for you when you went from being part of a team and kind of, I would say, being lower on the totem pole, lower on the hierarchy level, if you
Yeah.
will, to now leading one? I mean, you're the primary person who's leading the rest of the team. What was that adjustment like for you?
It was tough. I think leaders are born with that, some innately, of course. But part of the problem that I became my own boss is that I don't handle authority very well. And so, but part of that is that's troubling is now I don't have an authority to report to. And so
Mhm.
I'm much more lenient with myself as a
Yes.
leader, as a manager. So that would be one of the hardest things personally. But in terms of stepping into that leader role instead of a contributor role is as a contributor, as being part of a team, I'm a team player. I've played team sports my entire life. I've always wanted to be on a team. But I know that I could individually grind and that would get us very far. And so
Yeah.
what I've had to learn is, we hear, oh, lead by example. But in my mind, that meant like, okay, I'm going to show up and be the hardest worker there is on our team. But really, what
Yes.
that means is we need to lead by example of how we show up and like the state
Yeah.
of being and not just doing, and realizing that as a leader, more eyes are on how you react and present your work
Yes.
more so than just your individual objective contributions. And so that's been my hardest learning curve of like, I can make systems and crank out stuff all day long. But if I'm not equally showing them how to carry yourself as, maybe in your workplace, it's a Christian environment or
Mhm.
core values, or whatever that looks like, that's equally as important.
Definitely. I love that you said that too. We have this saying in our office, like to be the thermostat versus be the thermometer. So
Mm,
you're the one setting the tone, especially when it comes to people who like our office manager, our back office manager, people who are in more like areas of authority, I would say. How you respond to a situation is going to be how the rest of the team responds. And so I think there are challenges that come with that because every day you have to show up as your highest and best self.
yeah.
And that can be draining for a lot of people, but it can also be like, I think motivational and inspirational in the fact of like these people rely on me. I am setting the tone, I'm setting the culture, if you will, for the office. And I think that's super
Definitely.
important. So,
And too, I
um,
think one more thing on that is as big personalities such as yours truly, I
yeah,
really struggle with when I have rough days or I'm not feeling like bringing the energy. Like
totally.
it's almost like there's not space for that because that's what I've signed up for. And so
Yes.
it's such a blessing to, and this kind of sounds kind of weird, but I always wanted to be famous one day because, well, I'm great. But then
You
also
already are famous.
correct. I've achieved my goal. But the reason why is because I used to watch on YouTube videos just stream after stream after stream of like celebrities surprising their fans. And what stuck out to me
Mm,
about that is like, man, I wish one day that just by having my presence, someone would be brought joy. And
mm,
so in this scenario, I have the opportunity to do that of like people look up to me and I get to set that tone and culture of like, hey, I'm here to have a good time. Like, we're going to have a fun day because I'm on it today. And the flip side of that is when I'm not, people are still looking and expecting that. And so
definitely.
it affects their mood on the opposite side as well. But I've just learned to, communicate. Even yesterday we had a team meeting and I was just kind of feeling down of because, I'm going through counseling because it's necessary or whatever. And I just texted Logan and our office manager said, hey, just a heads up, I'm really like struggling to bring the energy. Can y'all help support? And they both like absolutely and stepped up in the meeting so I could kind of just coast. So just having team
Yeah.
around you to support you too.
So you may have just answered my next question, but being in the mastermind and the coaching cohort that we're in together,
Yeah.
which is just a lot of high achievers, very successful people, very successful entrepreneurs making a lot of money. One of our mentors' biggest advice is you cannot work on your business if you're so involved in your business. And so I
Mm,
know you personally have pulled out a lot, but it's given you not just like freedom and like, I'm just going to go shopping today. It's like, no,
yeah.
I'm actually working on the business because that is what moves the needle forward. So when you are out of the office, because I know you've recently stepped out a lot more than you were previously involved, how do you maintain the culture? How do you maintain the energy when you're not there?
Yeah. It's a great question. And honestly, it's been a learning curve. So, I've been able to be out for more events than Logan has, or I'll take more mornings off. And I used to just like stalk our EHR and Cairo HD and just see, okay, what patients are in there. I'm imagining what vibes happening. I'm texting like, did you tell her good morning? Like
Yeah, yeah,
crazy, right? But I just trust my team and I've just led by example in that way of, but not in a, okay, I'm going to lead by example, watch and do what I do. It's like we have
yeah.
intentional meetings about that of like, here's how, because we actually just shared this in the expanders group we're in, but we just let go of an associate because lots of reasons, but one of them was that patients were giving us feedback that when Logan wasn't in the office, the energy felt lower, even though the
Mm.
same care was being given, all of that. But it really came down to we sat down and looked at it, and it was just we realized that Logan was talking the entire time during her adjustment, where the other associate preferred more quiet adjustments. And it's
Right.
just setting the standard and expectation of our office of like, hey, we don't play sad music. So here's the
Mhm.
expectation of objective things that we can do to implement when we're not in the office to carry that. So if it's going to be a lower team staff day, lower energy day, let's play more hype music to not only encourage ourselves, but maintain that gap that may be missing. And then just
Yes.
really pouring into my direct report under me, Jess, our office manager, just encouraging her like over and over again that, hey, I want you checking in on Vicky today. I want you to do a vibe check at the daily huddle. I want you to like go out of your way to carry babies to cars and just like setting that expectation.
For sure. I love that. You mentioned that too of energy. And we talked to our business partner about this because he's like a freak when it comes to like even the music. Like it's like the little details can change
Yeah.
so much in the office. And like even having the music volume too high or too low, it can make the office feel more crowded or less
Yes.
crowded or whatever. And I think people don't think about these little tweaks. So you
Yeah.
mentioned like these one-on-one meetings, these check-ins. How often are you doing that? And what would you recommend to, let's say, like a smaller team of like one, two doctors or like one or two staff only? How often would you recommend checking in?
Yeah. I think it's called a proximity trap, right? So, especially on smaller teams, you're usually around each other a lot more. You're
Yes.
there when the doors are open, you're there when the doors are closed. You're there sometimes even, especially for us when it was just me, Logan, and Jess, we would eat lunch together because being in a new city, like we were all each other knew.
Yeah.
But just proximity doesn't equal alignment. And so having intentional check-ins, I think are really, really important. And I will say that as a caveat, like don't force it. So if you
Mm.
find yourself meeting weekly on Tuesdays and y'all end up just sitting there, you're actually wasting more time than being productive, but it might be a structure problem. So I would say implement as much strategy behind meetings before giving up on them first.
Yeah.
But for like a small team like that, I would say daily before the shift, just making sure you're on the same page of who's coming in, what's doing what, and then just setting the tone for the energy of the day, I think is really good. A lot of times, like even in bigger teams, we don't get to see each other throughout the day a lot, especially docs to team, because y'all are in the
Totally.
adjusting rooms or on the other side. So it's just kind of a point of connection. And
Yes.
then I would say, obviously, on onboarding, 30, 60, 90 days is great, even more so with intentional trainings. But in terms of check ins, I would say 30, 60, 90 is pretty standard. And then
Yeah.
ongoing, I would say quarterly. But however, at the same time, I don't wait for a quarterly meeting to address or pivot if we need to. It's just a baked in time that if something doesn't happen, we both know that it's going to be an opportunity for us to connect.
Absolutely. I love that. We personally, we do daily huddles in our office, and then we do what we call like level 10 meetings from the book Traction, the
Yeah.
whole EOS program. And we were doing that weekly. And then I heard a whole like Layla Armosi spiel about like when you meet with your team weekly, they're going to bring you weekly problems.
Mm,
And so the problems that were being brought are like, okay, I need you to solve that by yourself because you shouldn't have to come to me with that issue.
right.
And so
That's
now
good.
we've recently changed it to bi-weekly, and that's just been number one, it opens our schedule a lot more. But number two, like it just is so much more freeing to not have these like smaller problems kind of
Yeah, that's so
inundating
good.
us. So that was a helpful thing. That was a little helpful hack. All right, switching over to delegation and trust. How do you balance holding your team accountable while also trusting them to take ownership? And you gave this example in Kansas City with one of our kind of breakout sessions. You, I think, went to the back and there was a girl like reading, somebody on your team reading their Audible, their Kindle, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and you're like, hey, what are you doing there? So I was hoping for you to highlight that example specifically, but then also like,
Yeah.
how do you hold your team accountable without being like super hard on them?
Yeah, I think, and we talked about this too, but it goes back to radical candor of caring deeply, challenged personally. I think that's really rooted behind everything. But I truly believe that you earn the right to hold people accountable only once you've built a foundation of clarity. And
Mm.
so I saw this silly video in my deep research on TikTok one night, and it it was a kid, and he just basically went to his mom and was like, I don't think it's fair for me to get in trouble for something I didn't know was wrong. And so
Mm.
sometimes we get frustrated because we feel like we're about to hold them accountable to something that they should just know not to do. But at the end of the day, if you haven't set the standard and the foundation of what's expected in those moments, then they just thought differently and chose differently than you in that moment. And you just have to redirect, not discipline or hold accountable.
Yeah.
So the situation that I brought up in Kansas City is we have an hour before every shift, except our early morning. It's only 30 minutes, but usually the team gets here an hour before shift. They set up the office, they kind of catch up on paperwork, all those things, prep for the day. And one day I was here and the our team member had come in and started doing things, but I hadn't really like saw her in a long time. And so my other team member, our office manager, came up to the front where I was and said, "Hey, I have to tell you something." And I was like, "Oh no, I just don't like this already." It's like when someone texts you and says, "Can we talk?" This is like the vibes I'm
Yes.
feeling. And she was like, "So and so is back in the break room sitting and reading her Kindle." And I was like, "That is such a, are you joking right now? Or like, am I getting punked?" And I was like, "Let me just go see for my own eyes." So I was just like, walked back there. I needed to take something in my car anyway. So I would pass through there. And I saw her and I was just like, "Hey, what you doing?" And she was like, "Reading." And I was like, "That's such an interesting thing to be doing right now. Why are you doing that?" And keeping it lighthearted, right? Because
Yeah.
I want to, if I just walked in and been like, "What are you doing? Get off your ass and get up there and do stuff." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like I'm gonna propose an opportunity for you to realize that you're screwing up right now.
Totally.
And she was like, "Reading," and I was like, "Oh, why are you doing that? Is there nothing to be done?" She was like, "Well, there's nothing to be done." So, and I like looked 2 feet beside her and there was a pile of gowns that needed to be folded. And I
Yep.
was like, "Oh, well, I don't think those gowns are folded yet." And I was for sure sarcastic and lighthearted about it. I was like, "Oh, got it. Well, it looks like those aren't folded, but I'm sure if you're done with your stuff, Jess might could use some front help up front. But I would love to just know like what went through your head in that moment of like, hey, I'm supposed to be doing work from 9 to 10, but I'm going to use this to like relax a little and read a book." Like, but in that moment, which she ended up saying like, I don't know, I wasn't thinking, sorry, I won't do it again, blah, blah, blah. But then the more I thought about it, going back to that leading by example thing, when I don't have something to do, what am I doing? Like,
Yeah.
I'm sitting and scrolling on my phone. Or if I justified in my head, I only need 10 minutes instead of 45 minutes, I'm going to sit and work on something that's not related. And so
Yep.
just opening up that conversation of like, is this something that you've seen that I've done or that we haven't set the expectation for?
That's really good. You brought a couple of things to mind for me, and it's like number one, we got to be always checking in with ourselves because, like you said, we set the example. So if
Yeah.
there's nothing to do and I'm sitting there scrolling, they're going to think it's okay to do that too, right?
Right.
And so they are really looking at your every action, even if you don't think that way too.
Hmm.
And I always just tell team like there is always something to be done. If you are at work, you're working, you're cleaning, or you're training. There's
Yeah.
nothing else to be done. Like that's the only thing. I know, even if there's no like urgent work, you could be dusting the blinds, like clean the
Yeah.
toilet, do
Time to
something.
lean, time to clean.
100%. And that's like as doctors too, we're like, oh man, we're not actually like seeing patients, but like what else could we be doing? Could we be researching like marketing opportunities or
Right.
looking deeper into a case? Is there something we're missing? Like there's always something that could be done. And I think if we remind our team that, it would be a lot more powerful. But you also mentioned something else, and I think you are really, really skilled at this, is asking more questions to
Mm.
get you kind of lead the person to the answer that you want, but
Yes.
without them like feeling that way. So I think you just did a really good example of that, which is why I wanted you to share it. But I think as leaders or bosses or managers or whatever, we're afraid to be that authoritative, hey, what the heck are you doing? Get off your butt and like go work, whatever.
Yeah.
If we were to actually approach it from like a while you were doing that and not in like a sarcastic asshole kind of
Sure.
way of like a what I just help me like help me understand where
Yeah.
you thought it was okay because maybe this is a bad reflection of my leadership. If I gave you the impression that it's okay to read your Kindle while you're at work, I have failed you. And I
Yeah.
think you can take more ownership and responsibility. And I think as a leader, as you take ownership, they are more willing to take responsibility as well.
100% and admitting when you're wrong. So like when you're asking questions gives that opportunity for them to prove you wrong. And I'll give
Absolutely.
you an example of that is I've told my team because basically what was happening is they were making mistakes, but I could tell they were like I wanted to know actually if they were just like flippantly not caring or if they actually had a reason behind it. And so
Yep.
what I told them is like, "Hey, I'm noticing these things. What I'm going to do next time because I was intentionally working on my micromanagement at this time if I notice something that pisses me off or like I feel like was not done correctly, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to ask you why you did it. And I'm
Yeah.
genuinely curious because if, as long as you put thought behind it and it just led to a different outcome, that makes sense. And
Hmm.
so, an example of that same coworker, she did something different than I would have done it or was outside of our protocol. So I went to her and said, "Hey, can you tell me like your mindset behind that?" And she walked me through her mindset. And I was like, I can 100% see why you came to that conclusion. In the future, this is why I want it done this way. Like this is the why behind why I want it, but
Yeah.
100% could see how you do that. And then a silly example is literally the other day, I just get Amazon receipts all the time, people ordering stuff, and it was like pins. And I feel like we like lose pins or whatever, like are always ordering pins. And I was just sitting there with Logan. I was like, where are all of our pins going? I feel like we buy new pins every other week. And she's like, you think they run out of ink because we use them all the time? And I was like, I haven't thought of that. Okay, that makes sense. So just allowing room for yourself to be wrong.
Yeah, for sure. And then opening it up, like to have for other people to have opinions, I think is super healthy too. And I know you mentioned earlier the book Radical Candor, which we got this idea from you actually to read as a team. And
Yeah.
opening like the first couple pages, I was like, I don't know if maybe our whole team should have read this or just the leadership team. But I'm
Yeah.
really happy we're actually all reading it as a team now because I do feel like it's fostered an environment of like we can be open with each other and we don't have to be afraid of hurting each other's feelings because nothing is like personal. You don't have to take it sensitively.
Yeah.
But you've mentioned a lot of good points because I think in Radical Candor, it's about having compassion and caring about your team and not just like wanting to point out every mistake that they're making. That's not the
Right.
point of it. We're trying to elevate. We're on the same team. We are all literally on the same team. It's not me against you or her against her. It's like we're all trying to elevate together. So, what are some of your best takeaways or ideas from the book that could help some of our listeners, maybe who are in a leadership position?
Yeah, I recommend reading it if you haven't, or at least chat GPT reading it. Pull out the meat and
Cliff
potatoes. But
notes. Yeah.
yeah, but the whole concept is just, like I said earlier, caring personally and challenging directly and being, I feel like sometimes we get in this trap of, well, I'm not going to say anything because I don't hurt their feelings, but not being honest is hurtful.
Hmm.
And I think something that has just like left an impact on me after reading it is there's so many times where we get ourselves into situations and we get on the other side of it and we say this famous phrase of why didn't anyone tell me or why didn't you say anything, or you
Hmm.
end up firing a team member or demoting them or whatever and having to come up with a reason when in their exit interview or when you're telling them they're like, oh well, this is like, I wish you would have given me an opportunity to fix it. Or
Yeah.
like if a team member comes to you and is like, hey, this person is really rubbing me the wrong way. So I'm going to quit. And I've already accepted a job at another place because I don't feel safe here. And that defeating feeling of like, man, I wish we could have just challenged each other directly. And because we care about each other, because I care about your workplace environment and I care about your development and growth, I just think that it's harder to do the closer you get because you don't want to step on toes. But at the end of the day, that's how you make real growth and that's how you actually care for people.
So you brought up a good point there too. How do you draw that line? Because I know with your team, it's a little bit different. I think with our team too, we're guilty of like, we might be too close.
Hmm.
Like, we know our team very well. We know their families because
Yeah.
we do care about them. We are very compassionate. Um, and we want them to thrive and succeed. Even if they were to leave our office tomorrow,
Yeah.
I still want to see them go on and do amazing things. How do you draw that line and that boundary of like, yes, I care about you. I love you. I want to see you succeed. But at the same time, I am in charge of you. And if you're not doing the work that I expect you to do, and we've set those clear expectations, this is what's going to happen. And we're going to have to talk about your future employment here. Like, how do you draw
Yeah.
that line?
Yeah, just like that. You just sit. I think that's something that it comes more naturally to me than I give credit for
Mm.
of I just don't avoid hard conversations
Yeah.
and well, it's more so I don't avoid hard conversations that I think I'm right in. If it's about me being wrong, I don't talk about it. I think it's just being honest and calling a spade and pointing out
Yeah.
all factors. I'm really not a fan, honestly, of the like sandwich or the someone shared in our group of like a better best. Like Because what
Yeah.
happens is, and basically, but the thought behind that is like before you say something they could be better at, you say what they're the best at, but then they start to acknowledge that that's what you're doing, and it's just like
Yeah.
I don't want to have to partner every single thing with a compliment. What I'm
Yes.
gonna do and what I'll promise you is that when I see you do good, I'm gonna call out the good, and when I see you mess up, I'm gonna call that out. It's your job to make sure that it's more praise than correction. Like that's my
Yes.
opinion. But I literally had that conversation and it's just sitting down and acknowledging the tension like, hey, this is really hard and I need to be boss Bailey or, boss Emily right now. And just from a business standpoint, tell you, but the quarterly reviews help with that because it's a planned objective meeting. We're looking at
Yeah.
objective data of how the team has rated you, how you have rated your performance, the stats behind it. So that helps kind of take the emotion out of it. But at the end of the day, it comes down to saying, if we end up not getting on this performance correction path or whatever it is, and you end up not meeting expectations and transitioning off this team, I'm still in your corner and your friend, and you're still invited to my birthday party and to our Christmas party. But we just are moving too fast, and this train is moving too fast to have a squeaky wheel. And so we have to make decisions that are going to align with production in this office. I don't think you would be a bad fit in another office, but I just think this office is not quite where you're going to be a good fit for us or for you, and just
Dang.
saying that and just like being okay
Yeah.
with silence and letting them realize like, you know what, you're right, and allowing them room
Yeah.
to take accountability without you holding their hand the entire time.
100%. That was so good. Very eloquently stated. Love that. That's how I'm going to fire somebody next time if I need to
Just
fire
play
someone.
that recording.
Yeah, yeah. And this is too, like you talk about just being honest with somebody, like having
Yeah.
that like direction, right? Um, I think if we're not, and this is something that we've been guilty of in the past, because it's super hard to lead a team, especially when we're 25 years old, fresh out of
Yeah.
school. Not only have I never owned a business or adjusted 100 people yet, I've never led team. I don't know how to be somebody's boss, especially when they're like 50 years old. I'm
Yeah.
literally half their age. Like, how are they going to expect me to lead, right? But when we're not honest, we're just kicking the can down the road of like, you could have done better here, you could have done better here, but I never said that. And so
Yeah.
whenever we get to a point of either you're at the point of firing them or they just want to quit because they're not being challenged and like they're making mistakes and like you're not correcting them. If you would have done it along the way, you probably could have saved yourself a lot of heartache in the past. So I think to the point of like hard conversations, they're hard in the moment, of course, but so worth it. And so
Yeah.
worth it. And then you build that candor with each other. Like you build that trust and that I'll say what am I trying? The starts with an R. Rapport. Rapport.
Yeah. Yeah.
You build that rapport with them to an extent of like, I'm comfortable telling you this, so I need you to be comfortable also telling me things too. And
Yeah.
that's something the book opened up for me was like, they should feel comfortable and confident to give you feedback and
Yeah.
criticism as well, which was like, dang, that's a big wake up call. Because
100%.
like, holier than thou, like I own this place, I do everything great, right?
And you
So
can like you can get in that mode and like
yeah,
at the end of the day, 100%, you can act how you want. Like you're your own boss, you make the calls, but like
yeah.
what is that a way to live? I don't think so.
No, we always invite open communication. In our meetings too, we have like what's called IDS, identify, discuss, solve. And so we want everybody to bring solutions because everybody is part of the team. Everybody's
Yeah.
involved in some way. They're part of the pit crew. They're making the race car go around the track, whether they're changing the oil or changing the tires or they're the driver. They are in some way involved in keeping the car going. And so I don't want them to just come with these little weekly problems. I need them to come with solutions from their own creativity. And that's the kind of culture and relationship that we want to foster with them. So
Yeah.
with that being said, go ahead if you
Well,
want to
I was
add
just
to
gonna
that.
say, I think a practical for those wondering, like, okay, how do I create room for that feedback? Or it can be intimidating, especially in Logan and I situation and y'all's too, is there's two bosses. So in our one-on-ones, it's actually two on one. So it can kind of
Mm,
feel intimidating.
yeah.
So just a practical thing we've implemented is our office manager meets with each of our team members for 15 minutes in the office before their scheduled like lunch or coffee or whatever,
Mm,
as an opportunity to bring up anything that they don't feel comfortable saying to our face or specifically about us. And then also
really
another
good.
thing is in the surveys, we have each team member rate everyone and our names are on that list. So everyone gets an
Nice.
opportunity to rate us on punctuality, quality of work, excellence, all of that. So that's kind of objective ways to incorporate that too.
I love it. That's super practical and helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, kind of coming up to an end here, wrapping up. What would you give as advice to leaders, especially for other business owners? What is one thing maybe you'd tell them to start doing tomorrow, today, whatever, when it comes to leading team? What's like one amazing thing that you would tell them?
I would say ask your team. So don't expect yourself out of them and take the time and effort to get to know them, not only on a personal level, but their desires, what makes them tick. Um, like we talked about earlier, just if it's a survey, if it's a conversation, genuinely not just assuming how they feel about things, literally just asking and starting a conversation. You'll learn a lot more than you think you will.
I love it, Bailey. Thank you so much. Are there any closing or final thoughts that you want to share with our Path to Victory listeners?
I don't think so. I'm just grateful to be here and talk to you guys and just be in y'all's sphere. Y'all are just paving the ways in so many ways. So I'm honored to be arm in arm with you guys and looking forward to
Amen.
continuing to learn more from this podcast myself.
Hey, likewise, thank you so much for being here. I personally learned a lot, and I know our listeners will get a lot out of it as well. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you, Bailey?
Yeah, Birmingham, Alabama. You just come on down. But
Take a
we're on,
flight.
yeah, we're on Instagram, Cadence Cairo, and that's really where all the magic happens
Yes.
as well. My Instagram is Bailey Sloan with two Y's, but really Cadence is where the magic happens. So I would look that up.
Amazing, Bailey. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too.
All right.